my name is Kiara. I know that you must be very disappointed that you're not seeing Chris, aka Carbonic's beautiful face, but instead you've got me today. We were thinking about mixing things up a little bit on his channel. I know he always does Unreal Engine tutorials, but we are all probably solo game devs and we all probably have to do our own art. So I'm going to show you guys how to make this stylized 3D stone golem creature person. Yeah. And just so you know who I'm talking about, this is Chris Carbonic, in case you forgot. But yeah, this is what we're going to be making today. He's kind of in a weird pose because I was working on animating him for our own game. So we're going to make him instead in a T pose. Okay, so also, I just want to show you guys, in case you want to see what this looks like with a little bit of life into it, here is the same creature, but with a punching animation. This is an animation that it's still a work in progress for our own game because this is going to be a guardian type melee character for us. But yeah, I just wanted to show what that looked like. And then also, if you see like these cracks in its body, one thing that's really cool about this guy is that this is not just a color. If you go to cycles and turn off the lights, you can see that this is actually emissive. And so he's glowing. And I think that this is going to be a really cool addition for a game that is really dark, like the environment is kind of dark, because then it'll really pop out in that way. So yeah, anyways, and if you guys are interested in some videos that are more about how to animate, especially animating for characters that will eventually go into Unreal Engine, let me know if that's something that you want me to make a video about. So yeah, okay, so let's get started by going to our reference images. So here we have a few images, but these two here on the right are my favorites. These are the ones that really were the most inspirational for this character design because I love the idea of the floating rocks. But this guy is very complex and it's if I were to recreate this creature, it would be so much work. Spend I would have to like sculpt, I would have to retopologize, I would have to do so much. And it's just, we have so many characters to make that that's just not feasible. So I like this idea, but this guy in the middle is much simpler. So the idea is to combine these in a way. Like we have this guy on the right, the floating rocks, the overall design, but at this level of simplicity. And this one on the left is just an additional reference image. Really, I was just playing around with the different elements to see how this could look as an ice creature, as a fire creature, lightning, that kind of a thing. And I'll actually show some images on the screen of how you can take this character that we're about to make, and by simply changing the colors, it'll make it look like a totally different element, and it'll be really easy to have lots of different character varieties, but with the same model and the same rig and everything. So yeah, that's what we are working on. Let's go ahead and go to our Blender file. So we're going to start with a general, and then go in and just delete everything in the scene, delete, and then because we just deleted the starting cube, let's go ahead and add another cube because you have to do that. So with front view on, oh sorry, let me turn on my screen keys so you guys can see. There we go. Okay, so in the bottom left corner, you can see all the screens that I'm pressing. So what we're going to do is, sorry, going back to our reference images, we're going to start with these legs, these little floating rocks at the bottom. So let's take this cube and let's shift it up so that it's aligned with the bottommost part of the design. And let's scale it down in the Z-axis. And I might just leave it that size. Actually, no, let's scale it in the X a little bit. Okay, and now let's duplicate this. See, and shift it up so it looks like it's floating, and then do that again. Okay, so here we go. We already have our legs. Now let's take these same blocks, duplicate it, bring it up much higher this time, and let's scale this up, scale it in the Z, and this is going to be our main body. So let's also have this floating a little bit. Let's scale it let's scale it down here and then scale it more in the Z and play around with what you like and the type of body style that you like. But again, this is just the blockout. So don't worry too much about it. So let's duplicate this as well and then bring it up here and we're going to create the arms. And so I'm going to have this guy in a T pose because if you're animating this later, you want it to be in a T pose. It's just easier that way. Let's scale this in the Z. And my idea here is to create floating arms as well with the rocks. And so we're going to have three different subsections. There's like the upper arm, the forearm, and the hand. So we're going to have 3 blocks. So let's duplicate this again. Except this time, let's scale this one down a little bit. Bring it back over. And then duplicate this again for the hand. And scale that down as well. I think for the hand, I actually want to scale it to be a bit more like a cube rather than a rectangle. Okay, cool. Awesome. And so, although we're gonna have it a T pose, it doesn't have to be like exactly a T. And I kind of want to see what this looks like relative to its body. So I'm just gonna turn it a little bit like this. Okay. Next, I'm going to duplicate these arms and bring them over to the other side. We're actually going to delete this later, but just so that we can get a better idea of what this looks like as a whole with all the different body parts, we're just gonna have this here, and then we'll mess around with that later. Okay, and then grabbing this block again, bringing it up for the head. Let's scale this in the Z to create a little cube. Okay, so we got this going for us. I think what we should start with is taking the body and let's go into edit mode and X-ray. Grab these bottom parts and scale these down in the X so that they are aligned with the legs. So you see here they're the same size, so it looks more like all one and connected. And then I'm also going to grab the shoulders and I'm going to scale those out in the X to make it more imposing. I want this creature to be a tank style guardian. So, and I feel like the broader shoulders are going to make it look more imposing. So there we go. I think I'm also going to take these arms and scale them in their personal z-axes a little bit. I just feel like they need to be a bit thicker. Okay. And then let's also rotate this so it aligns with the body. Like this. Okay. And then just for completeness sake, let's just duplicate the arms again so that we have that. Sorry for the repetition. Okay. Okay, cool. So this is our blockout. At this point, we can already go ahead and start adding details, although now that I turn to the side, this guy looks really funny, so let's just scale this in the Y a little bit. Okay, there we go. So it doesn't look too ridiculous. There we go. Okay, so let's go back into the front view. And the first thing that we want to do is add a bit more shape to the body and the different components. So going to the main frame, let's tab in and add a loop cut by doing Control R in the center of the body and then scaling this out in all directions. It kind of looks like a shield when you do this, but I think it looks pretty cool. And then going to the side view, let's also do a loop cut on the side and scale that out in all directions. Actually, wait, Control Z, let's go do this in the front view. Here we go. Cool. Okay, and now let's scale this down since we made it bigger to align with the body again. I also want to shift the head up a little bit. Okay, awesome. So I feel like that in and of itself added a ton of detail or a ton of uniqueness, and it was barely anything. So that's what we're going for. Okay, so now let's go ahead and keep going with the body. So I actually want to continue with like making it look a bit more imposing. I also want to go tabbing into edit mode, going into X-ray view, grabbing the bottom, and I want to scale on the sides in the Y to be a bit thinner at the bottom, and then again a bit larger in the top. Cool. Okay, awesome. And now going back into the side view, let's grab the legs and shrink them in the Y so that they're aligned with the new body side view. Awesome. So that is perfect. Let's now, we can go ahead and do a few things. So first, with the legs, going into front view, I'm going to keep this as is. I'm going to take the second leg, foot component, whatever, and shrink this down to make kind of like a ladder stepping stone type appearance. So it's like this. Cool. And then I'm also going to add a bit more shape to the legs themselves by going into edit mode, doing Control R, and moving this up a bit and scaling this out in all directions so that the legs have a bit more shape to them as well. I'm going to do the same thing for this second foot leg thing. Okay, cool. And I think I'm just going to leave the bottom one alone because I don't want to add too much. Okay, awesome. So now that we have this going for us, it's time to add even more detail to this. So what we're going to do, go into front view. Actually, you don't have to go into front view. I tend to go into front view a lot. You might notice that. Let's go and add some beveling to all the different subcomponents. And so what this is going to do, we are going to actually bevel the entire thing later on to give it the more like stylized soft look. But what we're about to do here are like really manual, intentional bevels that's going to give it a stone rockiness look. So going into the arm, let's tab in. And what you're going to do is you're going to select one vertice at a corner, and you're going to do Shift Control B to create a bevel like this. And when you do that, you can also select the vertice and kind of like shift it, double click G to shift it down, double click this G to shift this down. And so now with just that little bit, you've created this like, looks more like a rock, you know, with those little bevels. And so what we're going to do is just do that throughout. And what you can also do, aside from just the vertices, you can also go into edge select mode, select an edge, and instead of doing Shift Control B, we're just going to do Control B, and we can bevel the edge as well. And if you are working, if you're beveling two different vertices, so like here, for example, instead you also just do Control B. You do not add the shift. So you do the shift only when it's just one single vertice. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is bevel all these different corners and edges all throughout for all of the arms, all of the legs, everywhere, and do what you would like to do. It's up to you how much beveling you want. But yeah, and I'll just speed it up and we can go through it. One thing though is I won't do it on these left hand arms. I'm instead just going to do it on this one side and then we'll duplicate it later. So don't bother doing it on both arms. Okay, so now that we've gone and beveled everything other than these right hand arms, I'm going to add a bit more shape again, or mess around with the shape at least. So for the arms, as I was looking at this, I actually want to scale these in the Y. I just think that they're a bit too thick. So there's that, and then I won't even mess around with the other ones right now. And then for the legs, I'm going to go into front view, take these and rotate them a little bit just to add a bit more variety. And then also, I think I'll just leave that bottom one as is, maybe shift it up a bit. Cool. Okay. And then let's also, at this point, let's get rid of these blockout arms, pull these other ones. And now what I'm going to do is the lazy way of adding variety, but you could leave those blockouts and just bevel those individually and manually as well if you want it to be super unique. But what I'm going to do is just take these, duplicate them, bring them over to the other side, rotate so that they're aligned, and then I'm just going to rotate this in the, whoops, sorry. I'm gonna go to the front view. That's what I always look at. Rotate these in their personal x-axes. I actually don't know how to say that. I say personal x-axes when you like double click it, but you guys know what I mean. Anyways, and then do 180 on your numpad so that they rotate around. That way they look different, but they're really just the same thing rotated. So that's that for the arms. Cool. So now take a look at your guy and see if you want to add any additional shape to it. I think what I'm also going to do is for the arms, I'm still going to keep it like in relatively in T-pose, but I want to add a little bit of curve to it just so I can see what it looks like when it is curved more in a resting position. You could potentially leave this as is if you're later going to animate this and make the resting position curved, but I just want to do it myself as well. So what I'm going to do is take this middle part, turn on proportional editing, grab this middle arm, do G, and then, whoops, go back, hit G, and then do the scroll wheel out so it selects all of the arms, and then I'm going to bring this back in the Y. Then I'm going to take this hand, and with proportional editing still on, I'm going to rotate the hand, and then turning it proportional editing off, grab both of these and bring them forward again so that they're aligned with the front arm. So that gives them a bit of a curve so we can at least see what it looks like. And yeah, and let's do the same thing over here. So grabbing this, proportional editing on, click G, whoops, G in the Y, go back and then rotate this gun, rotate this one, turn off proportional editing, grab both of them and then bring them forward. Cool. Okay, awesome. So we now have our guy that has like a bit more character to him now. But let's now go ahead and work on the head. So going to the head, this right now is just a cube, right? But let's just go to the head and add a bit more shape to this one. So let's go into tab mode, and similarly with the body, let's go into X-ray, vertex select mode, grab these bottom ones and scale them in the X to create more of a triangle type shape. And now what I'm going to do is add a loop cut. So Control R, loop cut. What's going on? I'm in object mode. So loop cut right here. And let's scale this outwards to create kind of like a diamond shape. And then I'm going to take the whole thing and I'm going to scale it in the X so it's not quite as sharp. Kind of like this. And then bring it up in the Z and let's take a look. Okay, so the head, looking at it further away, I think the head is too big now. Let's bring it back down. And I might scale it some more in the X. Okay, cool. I also think I want this chin to be a little bit less angular. So going back into X-ray mode, let's grab these and then double click G to bring these up a bit. Or sorry, I guess we're making it more angular. Anyways, okay, cool. So now we've got the head started. Let's keep going with this. So tab into the head And what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 loop cuts on one side of the face, and then another 2 loop cuts on this side of the face. Now going into side view, oh, this head is ginormous on the side. Let's scale that in the Y. Okay, cool. That's good. Okay. So tapping back in, let's add more loop cuts on the side, except this time we're gonna add 3. And I know this looks like a lot, but bear with me, it's not too bad. What we're gonna do is basically select every other vertex. So starting with this one here in the corner, and then I'm going to shift select this one in the middle and then shift select this one. And we're going to do the same thing, but on the back row, skipping that middle row. Here, here, here. Perfect. Now going to the front view, with all those still selected, we're going to hit G and the Z, and we're going to bring this up because now we are finally creating the spikes. So going back to our reference images, we're basically creating these spikes. And my idea is to have 3 spikes in the front, and I want spikes in the back, but again, the simpler version, so we're only going to have 3 spikes. So let's go to our guy, and now we have kind of this like crown going on. And as you can tell, these spikes in the back, you can't really see them in the front view at least, because they're the same height as the ones in the front. So go to side view, X-ray, and let's grab the tops of these in the back, and let's bring these even higher. Actually, let's have front view. Bring these even higher than the ones in the front. Cool. Now turning off X-ray mode, let's take a look at this. Okay, so as you can see, we have this weird 90-degree angle type thing going on here. And to resolve this, what we need to do is pull out our knife tool. So what I'm going to do is click K on our keyboard. I'm going to select a vertice, and let's actually scroll in so you guys see this. When I'm selecting a vertice, this cube here, it highlights, oops, sorry, trying to get a good angle. It highlights red. That means I'm selecting a vertice. If it's not highlighted red, then that means you're creating a new vertice, and it'll look like this, and we don't want that. We don't want to, whoops. We don't want to create a new vertice. We want to select the already existing one. So you press K, select the existing vertice, and then we're going to go down and connect it, making sure that the box is highlighted red, connect it down here, select, and press Enter. And now we have just created some new geometries to add some like thickness and getting rid of that weird 90-degree. So what we're going to do is do that same thing, but for all of the outer spikes. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so once you've done that, go around and make sure that all of your outer spikes and outer edges of the spikes were correctly put in place. And now going to the front view, let's actually mess around a little bit with the positions of these spikes. So I'm going to grab each side and kind of pull them outwards. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical because, again, this is like the rock creature and he's not going to be perfectly symmetrical, most likely. So just grabbing these and kind of pushing them around. I'm also going to go into side view, go into X-ray. I'm going to grab the tops of the front and I'm going to bring them forward just a little bit. And then same thing with these in back, except I'm going to bring these backwards just a little bit. And then for the front, like these middle spikes, I want these to kind of like stand out, be more of like the star of the head a bit more. So I'm going to go back to the side view and I'm going to grab this front one and I'm going to push it even more forward than those others. Same thing with the back, except pulling it backwards a little bit more. Okay, cool, awesome. Okay, so let's go back and go into front view. And we are going to use our knife tool again to connect these spikes to the middle section. So pressing K and connecting down here, enter, and then same thing over on this other side. Awesome. Okay, so now what I'm going to do back into top view, grab this outer vertex, double click G and pull it out to the side. Now going to that same side, let's keep it selected and do GZ to bring it up a little bit. And then we're going to do the same thing, but on the other side. Double click G, bring it over here, go to that side. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. There we go. Cool. Okay. And so now going into top view, let's select these inner vertices and sorry, not just these inner ones. Let's select all of these, this huge square, and let's elevate these a little bit so it looks more like mountains and less like spikes. So G and the Z, bring them all up a little bit. Awesome. Okay. Now, looking at the overall shape of the head, I want to add some more, I don't even know, shape. So what we're going to do is do Alt select this middle loop, go into the side view, and let's scale these in the Y so there's a bit more form to the front of the head. And then same thing with the side of the head. Let's go to side view and we're going to select these vertices right here on the side and also on the other side. So shifting to this side, select those same vertices. And now if you go to the front, let's scale these in the X. Whoops, what's happening? Oh, I accidentally did not click shift click when I selected those other vertices. So let's select everything. Okay, now go to the front, S and the X, scale this out a little bit. And then selecting this vertice over here and then shift selecting this other vertice, let's scale these out a little bit further. Okay, cool. So now take a look at your overall shape. This head on the side view looks really odd to me. So I'm going to tab in. We're going to do X-ray mode. We're going to select all these at the bottom. And same thing that we did with the body, we're going to scale these in the Y so that it's more, so it's narrower at the bottom. And I might even increase the opposite of narrow on the top. I'm going to widen the top. Okay. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, just take a look at the overall shape, see if you like it, see if you want to play around with the spikes. Maybe you want to add more spikes, maybe you want them to be totally in opposite directions and really wild. So just play around and see what you like. I'm pretty happy with my spikes right now, so I think I'm going to leave these as is. So let's continue on with these. Let's go to the top view. And what I'm going to do is grab these vertices in the back and I'm going to shift them in the Y so that they're further in the back. And then same thing with these in the front. I'm going to shift these in the front a little bit. Cool. Okay, and then I also want the middle spikes to be wider than the ones on the side. So going back into top view, I'm going to take this vertice and this vertice and I'm going to scale them down in the X so it's a bit diagonal like this. And then I'm going to take these in the back and let's go to front view so we see what we're doing. Let's scale these outwards in the X. So it's scaled like this. That looks pretty good. And then same thing in the front, but maybe a bit less. Awesome. Okay. I think I'm going to scale these in a bit more too. Okay. Okay, so we are nearly done with the spikes on the head. I just want to emphasize those middle spikes a little bit more. So going to the front view, I'm going to add 2 loop cuts. One here and then one on the other side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab those in the back and I'm going to scale those in the X. Sorry, let's scale them in all directions, not just in the X, and expand it a little bit. And then same thing with the front. I'm going to scale this out, but not quite as much as the one in the back. Okay, perfect. So now let's just finish the head. Later on, we're going to bevel this whole thing and we're going to smooth it out. And I noticed that if we go here and we add just 3 loop cuts, it prevents some like stretching and weird shading. So I'm just going to add 3 loop cuts there as well. And now like the head is pretty much done. So I think it still looks pretty ginormous. So I'm going to scale it down some more. But this looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to just leave it like this. I also think the body is a bit too thick, right? Is that just me? I'm going to mess around with that a little bit too. Scale this a little bit in the Y. And maybe shift these to be narrower. And then if you shift those to be narrower, then you have to shift the legs to be narrower. Okay, cool. I am happy with this. Awesome. And so now let's go ahead and add some eyes. And these are going to be super, super simple eyes. Let's do Shift A, add a new mesh, and select a cube. Let's go into front view and bring this up to the head. Let's scale it down. Let's move this forward so we can see it. And let's do some really simple, let's scale this in the X. Let's scale this in the Z so it's a bit more narrower. And then let me see what it looks on the side. It's probably pretty thick. So let's scale this in the Y so it's a lot thinner. Going back to front view, I want to add let's tab in and add a loop cut. So I'm going to do Control R, loop cut here. And I'm going to scale this in the X so it's kind of more of a diamond shape. And then I think these are too large, so I'm going to scale these down a bit. Okay. And let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier so we can see what this looks like. So selecting your eye, go to the modifier tab, add a modifier, mirror, take your mirror object and select the head. So now we have this going for us. And let's rotate this. I want my creature to be kind of scary looking, I guess, or ominous. So I'm going to have a very like down, like angry type look. And see how you feel about that. I think it actually needs to be a bit thicker, so I'm going to tab in. Actually, we don't need to tab in. Let's scale in the personal Z and just make it a little bit thicker. Okay, cool. Sounds pretty good to me. Let's go to the side and bring these closer to the actual head. So G and the Y. Let's rotate this so it's more aligned. I actually want these to be floating a little bit. If you want them to completely connect to the head, then you can go to the modifiers tab and add, what is it called? A skin modifier? Sorry, shrink wrap modifier. Do a shrink wrap modifier so that it connects to the head. But for me, I want it to be floating kind of like the body. So I'm gonna bring these further back. Let's see what that looks like. Top view, and you kind of have to like play around with this a little bit to get it to be exactly the shape that you'd like. But yeah, this looks pretty good to me. It's still a bit too far forward. Okay. What we're about to do is bevel the whole thing. And before we do that, just make sure that you're totally happy with the overall shape. And as I'm looking at this, I think that the body is a bit too like elongated. So I'm going to scale it in the, whoa, that was way too far. Let's scale it in the Z a little bit. Like this. Yeah. And then I'm going to bring this up. Okay, cool. I like that better. Awesome. Yeah. So just like make sure that you like the shape. Once you're happy with it, let's go into this forward view. Let's select everything other than the head. I did that and I selected the head. Select everything other than the head. Do Control A to apply all transforms, and then Control J to join it all together. So now you have your body as one cube, and then the head is standalone. So now let's go ahead and go to the modifiers tab again, select your body, go to modifiers, add modifier, do bevel. And so what we're going to do, let me take a look at my notes because I already decided what kind of bevel I want for my body, but play around with it and see what you like. It's also going to be a bit different depending on how stretched and the type of geometry that you have, so just play around with it. But for me, what I'm going to do is do width type percent. Amount, I'm going to do 1.64%. Segments, 2, limit method, none, and then shading, hard and normals. Oh, and then I also have to enable auto smooth. There you go. Cool. So now our body has this bevel to it. And you can see that it's like softening the edges a little bit. And that gives it more of the stylized look. If you had it really sharp, it looks a lot, it looks really different. And you can test to see what this looks like if I do X, it's just different. It looks like really sharp and angular, but when you have the bevel, it looks a lot nicer like this. Okay, so now let's go and do the head. So let's do shade auto smooth, go to the modifiers tab, do bevel, and then for this one, I'm also doing width type percent, but the width percent amount, I'm going to do 4.18%. Segments to limit method angle. With the angle, I'm going to set to 22 degrees. And then shading hardened normals. And so I'm just going to take a look and see what I think. I think the back looks a bit odd, and so I'm going to tab in. I think the reason, so if you see, it just looks kind of weird here. I think the reason why it looks like that is because these ones in the back need to be shifted even further back. So let's just bring that more to the Y. You saw how that kind of like cleared it up a little bit. And you can also play around. Another reason why that could be happening is because my width percent, I determined this on a different model. And so you can play around and see, like, if I go like this, it's very angular, and if I can like soften it a little bit. So going to the back, let's see if that modifies it. Not quite. Let's go back to our 4.18%. Let's change the limit, the angle. There you go. Yeah, so that fixed it a little bit. And so, yeah, you can see here, you can play around with the angles and see what looks best for your design. So if you had a 0, it will look like this. For me, I'm going to be like let's see. What does that look like? What does it look like in the front? That looks kind of weird. I'm going to reduce the angle a little bit for the front part. Okay, so I've been playing around with it a little bit. This, for some reason, the geometry is a little bit different from my previous, when I was practicing for this tutorial. And I actually have the limit angle set to 12 now. So I've decided that I actually really like this line going all the way down. So rather than trying to like fix it by getting rid of it completely, when I did that, I was able to get rid of it completely, but then it like beveled the front too much and I didn't quite like that. So I actually am rather just going to keep the line going all the way straight down. And I actually really like the way that that looks. So that's what I decided. But again, play around with it, see what you like, and leave it that way. Okay, awesome. So now that we've beveled and added these modifiers, what I'm going to do is create a new collection, call it archive. And I'm going to take everything here and I'm going to duplicate it and bring it over to the archive section, hide this from view so that we have a copy of it, because what we're about to do is apply the modifiers. So taking the body, we're going to apply that, taking the head, apply that. Did I apply the mirror already? No, I did not. So let's apply the mirror as well for the eyes. And now selecting everything, going into tab, you can see that our bevel was added to almost all of the edges. And if you select everything, you can see that our vertex count is at about 2.5. And I'm really happy with that vertex count. It's really great for a character. So that's what we have it at. So to continue on, what we're going to do is go to front view. Right now the head is separated from the body. I did that because I wanted the bevel to be different for the head than I did for the body. But now let's go ahead and join it all together again. So let's select everything, including the eyes, including the head. Control A to apply all transforms. That just prevents issues when you're joining. Control J to join it all together. And now we have our creature person. And so to continue this, I like the way this looks. It's low poly, but it still has some interest to it, especially with all of the floating rocks. But my favorite part, and this is really going to be like the most creative part, what we're going to do is we're going to select the body, we're going to tab in, and I'm going to go here, let's show you. So we are going to now add these cracks that I was talking about earlier, these emissive cracks. So to do this, let's go to our guy, and what we're going to do is add these cracks using the knife tool. So pressing K again, we're going to go in and we're going to select this edge over here, and we're going to create a lightning type crack effect. So this is the part that's supposed to be like the fun, creative part. So just go and do whatever you'd like. One point of advice though is as you're doing this, so you can do kind of like a zigzaggy type pattern. But when you look at like a lightning bolt, the bottommost part is the thinnest and then the top is the thickest. So kind of like with the bottom, keep it a bit thin if you'd like it to look like lightning. And then as you go up back to the top, make it a bit thicker. And then we're going to circle around to the back and do it over here as well. For the back, I actually want this one to not necessarily look like lightning, but just be like, add like color. So I'm just going to really freestyle this in the back and just kind of do whatever floats my boat. Okay, now going back to the front. Okay, so this is kind of an important part. When you're circling back to the front, you need to make sure that you're selecting this vertice and looping it around. Otherwise, it's going to be disconnected and it's not going to work. So there you go. So now we have like our little lightning bolt type thing that we're going to add material to later. I also want to balance this out with having some more over here on the bottom. And another point of advice is because we made this part so thick in the back over here, when I circle around to the back, I'm gonna make this actually be quite thin so that it's like balanced with thick at one side and like thinner on the other. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna start in the front, pulling out our knife tool and doing a bit of a zigzag again. I'm going to zoom in and make sure that I'm hitting this one. Nice. Okay, awesome. So now we have our lightning design, and we are going to now tab out. And when you tab out, you're not going to see this at all because we just added vertices without it actually doing anything. But what we're going to do now is go into shading and making sure that you're in at least EV or cycles so that you can see the color. What we're going to do is add some material slots. So although the intention of this character is to be a game asset that eventually goes to Unreal Engine, I'm creating materials in here in Blender. I'm creating material slots. But later on in Unreal, I'm actually going to recreate the materials in Unreal because it's actually, I've read that it's a bit more optimized, like it's better for performance if you use Unreal materials rather than Blender, which actually makes a lot of sense because if I have like 20 different characters and they're all the material brown, but I'm importing the brown material like 20 different times, it's definitely different. And Unreal also like optimizes their own materials, so you want to use Unreal materials. However, you still want to do this part in Blender so that you can tell Unreal what part of the mesh is going to be this color and what part of the mesh is going to be this other material. And if you guys are interested in learning more about the process of Blender to Unreal, it's really hard to find information, and so I've struggled quite a bit, but I have like a decent workflow now. So if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments and I could potentially make a video on it or several videos on it. So anyways, let's go ahead. Let's add a new material. And we're going to call this MI brown. And the reason why I'm calling it MI brown is because you want, when you're bringing this into Unreal, you want the material name to be the same name as the material that you have in Unreal. And in Unreal, I tend to call my materials MI underscore the color, MI being material instance, because I'll have like my master material and then material instances and blah, blah, blah. We can discuss that at a later time if you guys are interested. But anyway, so I have MI brown, and I'm going to actually go to my notes to see what colors I chose for this because I have already decided. But again, play around with it. And as I showed at the beginning, the colors that you pick can really make a big impact onto what element this creature looks like. This is definitely like an elemental type of creature. So play around with it. I'm going for more of like the stylized stone golem vibe. So we have that here for brown. And then let's go and add a new material slot at least, and do MI. Let's call this blue underscore, whoops, emissive. Did I spell emissive wrong? I don't know. Does it have two M's? I don't know. But we're going to leave it like that. So MI underscore blue emissive. I'm going to set the base color to blue. This doesn't really have that big of an impact, but it kind of does. So I just set the base color to whatever. The emission, let me get my hex code for this. I go to the emission, go to hex, do this. I'm going to do a bluish. Did I not? Here we go. Did that not work? Oh, here we go. Sorry. For emission, you have to increase the brightness if you want to see it. And then, so we can actually see what we're doing. Go into tab, go into edit mode. Luckily, I already have my different vertices selected to pick our like lightning cracks. If you don't, you could just, maybe I'll just show you just in case you accidentally deselected. But you can just go like this to grab all the different cracks, shift select and make sure that you're hitting everything. Especially making sure that you're hitting like these little side pieces so you're not missing those. Otherwise it's going to look like discontinuous. So yeah, continue. I don't want that. Okay, here we go. Continue selecting all of the different pieces. Okay, so we have our lightning cracks selected. And then I'm going to hit our MI underscore blue emissive and do assign. So that now assigns the material slot to our particular geometry that we created for these cracks. And going to the emission, emission, so we already set the emission, oh sorry, I haven't set the emission color. Setting the emission color to whatever color you would like. And then the important part is going to emission strength and messing around with this. So I'm actually going to change my color a little bit because I already decided, but play around with what colors you want. For some reason, my hex is not working, but that's okay. Let's just do this manually. I'm going to have it like this, and I want it to be kind of like a lighter-ish blue. So let's go like right here. Cool. We'll do this. And I actually might want it to be a bit more purpley rather than bluish. Like this. Yeah. And so the more that you do the emission, the whiter it looks. So you don't want it to be too high, but the emission does also set how bright it is. So I'm going to do it like right here. Yeah, because I want some color, but I also want it to be emissive. Cool. And also, I want the eyes to have this same material. So let's tab in. Go to vertex select mode. Make sure that you're not selecting anything. So double click A to undo everything. I actually have to like quadruple click. I don't know why, but whatever. And then hover over the eyes and click L to select the eye. And then we're going to go and we're going to assign this here. Similarly with this eye, hover over, click L. For some reason that's not working now. Oh, okay, I guess because you can't be selecting the vertex or something. So unselect any vertices and then hover and do L, assign. Nice. All right. We now have our creature, our stylized golem person. He is I really like this character. I hope that you guys like this character. He's really simple, but I also feel like he still has like some character to him, mostly because of the emission. That's really like my favorite part, but also like the different bevels and like the floating rocks. So yeah, this is this is it. This is the creature. So we've now made our guy. I actually don't know how long that was. It was probably about an hour, which is really not bad for starting a creature from start to finish. But yeah, if you like this kind of tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and let me know in the comments if you want more of these, whether it be like character modeling tutorials, whether it be the Blender to Unreal workflow. My art style is really more like this type of like stylized, relatively low poly look. So if you like that, let me know. And let me know what you think. This is really my first ever tutorial. So thanks for bearing with me. Okay, thank you.